Oh boy, the Milestone Compendium is finally here, and in this video, I'm giving you an overview. What's up guys, BJ Kicks here. I buy comics, I read them, and I review them, all for your viewing pleasure. So if you're new here, welcome. If not, welcome back. On this channel, I do comic book unboxings, reviews, and hauls, everything in between. So if you're interested in comic book content, consider hitting that subscribe button and make sure you tap the bell icon. That way you're notified when new videos of mine go live. Now today is a video that's been such a long time coming. If you've been watching the channel, then you know how big of a fan I am of Milestone Media and the Milestone Comics imprint over at DC. They are a company that was founded way back in 1993. They had a super prolific run through the early and mid 90s before they kind of closed their publishing doors in 1997. But they've recently made a resurgence. So there are new versions of Static, Icon, and Rocket and Hardware out in print right now with new single issues coming out every month. It's a super exciting time, but that leaves some longtime fans like me wondering, what about the old stuff? And so now we have this. Milestone Compendium Volume 1 is out in stores right now. You can buy it at our channel sponsor, Organic Price Books. So I'm going to switch up the camera view. I'm going to show you exactly what's inside here. We're going to talk about these characters, who they are, the history, and why this book is so important. Can't wait to do it, so let's go ahead and switch it up. All right, guys. The moment's finally here, and we're taking a look at the Milestone Compendium One. Now, this is a huge collection. It's over 1,300 pages, and it collects a lot of books. So just a quick introduction. I'm going to do a full history of Milestone Media video later on this month, since it is Black History Month. So I won't go into crazy detail today, but a lot of people never got the chance to experience this universe or any of these characters. So I'm going to give you a brief overview. So Milestone Media was a company founded back in 1993 by Dwayne McDuffie, Dennis Cowan, Derek Dingle, and Michael Davis. Also with some help from Christopher Priest as well. And they were basically a company born out of a lack of diversity in comic book media, right? Now, we have had Black superheroes. I mean, we can name several. Black Lightning, Black Panther, Black Goliath, Black. No, I'm joking. But, you know, so we've had a lot of Black characters over the course of comic book history, but up until honestly, late into the 90s, a lot of the Black characters either seemed like kind of black skins on white characters, or they just seemed like caricatures of people that you may have seen on TV or in other media. It was clear that the people writing these characters didn't really know what to do with them. And so in the early 90s, Dennis Cowan first has the idea to create a company featuring more diverse comic book characters, not to like play up the Black card or anything, but to be more reflective of the world outside your window. And so he and the other co-founders set out to create this universe. They create a ton of characters, a ton of backstory, and then they reach a partnership with DC Comics to actually publish their books, which was a groundbreaking agreement at the time. The only thing that had happened up until this point, we were in the very early days of Image Comics, but Image was very much kind of struck out on their own. No one had had a relationship with a major, you know, big two comic book publisher where they don't have editorial control and you had control over all your characters. So we had a ton of characters. Probably the most familiar to most of you would be Static, who later starred in a TV show called Static Shock. And you know, we've had Hardware and Icon, and we'll talk about the characters later. But unfortunately, Milestone kind of got labeled the Black company even though they had way more to offer than just the skin color of their characters. And when the comic book industry kind of imploded in the late 90s, in 1997, Milestone closed their doors as a comic book publisher, although they never closed the company. They stuck around. Like I said, Static ended up getting a cartoon TV show. There were all sorts of licensing deals and things like that. And then finally, just last year, Milestone Media returned to publishing comics with, like I said, a new deal with DC Comics. And so we've got new issues of Static and Icon and Rocket and Hardware. These are available at your local comic shop right now, and they're getting hardcover collections later this year. These three are not included in this compendium. What this compendium collects is the first full year, basically, of all of their original publishing titles. So we've got Hardware, we've got Icon, we've got Blood Syndicate, we've got Static, of course, we've got the Shadow Cabinet, and we've got Zombie. Now, before this collection came out, the only way for you to read these books would have been to get these original issues, like I did. The only issue I'm missing is Static number 45, and I will have the entire Milestone Comics publishing history. But you don't have to go the route I did and pay hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on eBay. You can start your Milestone collection with this very easy to find trade paperback compendium. So now that I've given you a brief history, let's take a look at this book. So this is your standard sized trade paperback. It's a compendium, which just means it collects a whole lot of issues. This book is over 1,300 pages. There are omnibus that collect less material than this. Look how thick that is. As a matter of fact, that's how thick it is compared to the Uncanny X-Men Volume 2 omnibus. But as you can see, it's smaller than an omnibus. This is the same size as a standard comic book as far as the paper size. So now that we've seen the front, we've got this. This is a brand new cover by Dennis Cowan. Look at this spine. This spine has an image here by Walter Simonson. This was from the cover of Static issue 8. And then on the back, we've of course got a description of, what's inside, as well as, a sneak peek at all the covers that are collected in here as well. So the Milestone Universe is really, really awesome. It is a shared comic book universe that all takes place in the fictional city of Dakota. Dakota, you could probably see as a stand-in for Detroit, although there are definitely like elements that remind you of maybe New York as well. But anyway, this book, because this is a shared universe, I was curious to see how they were going to collect it, like whether or not it was going to collect them in the original order that they were published. And I would say that I think they did a little bit better than that. So instead of collecting them in the original publishing order where you would have gotten Hardware number 1, then Icon number 1, then Blood Syndicate number 1, etc., they've got collected several story arcs at a time. So you're getting the first 4 issues of Hardware, then the first 4 issues of Blood Syndicate, and so on, up until you get the full collection. So before we jump in it, I'll tell you this collects Hardware issues 1 through 12, Blood Syndicate 1 through 12, Icon 1 through 10, and Static 1 through 8, as well as Shadow Cabinet issues 0 and Zombie issues 0 through 11. So like I said, this is basically the first full year out of the 4 years that Milestone was actively publishing comics. It would take 4 of these books, if they kept the mapping the same, to finish out the full line. And I expect that they will. So I'm excited about that. Now, I've given you enough history. I've told you what's inside. Now let's take a look at it. Now, you guys know I'm a bit of a Milestone Media super fan. I've been just devouring all of the content that I could find on eBay and online. I've been like scouring through interviews. I even got a chance to interview co-founder Dennis Cowan myself, which was insane. Super dope. And so, I've grown to love these characters over the last 2 years or so. since I started reading them. So right here, we're being introduced to Hardware. Hardware is a company man. He's an inventor who, you know, up until a certain point had been inventing or making all his inventions for a company that he worked for. Turns out that company didn't revere him as much as he revered it. And so he's kind of bucking up against the system, if you will. And in, you know, his railing against the system, he's learning more and more how sinister the man behind that company, the man he once saw as a father figure, really is. So that's really cool. This series is super compelling. A lot of people compare Hardware to like Iron Man. I think he kind of acts more like Batman, but I can see where the comparisons come from. But he definitely uses a lot of tech. He's definitely like on the more violent side of superheroes, and just a really, really dope character. And then you get the Blood Syndicate. So the Blood Syndicate, they were a series. They were members from a few different gangs who all met up one night to fight each other. And while they were there, the police kind of bombed or blew up the spot. And in this event that became known as the Big Bang, a lot of people died and a lot of people ended up with superpowers. And so the Blood Syndicate are the remaining gang members who all got superpowers and decided to team up together, create a new gang, and kind of fight for their territory in Paris Island. Very, very compelling stuff. This is Brick House. She just happened to be standing next to a brick wall when the Big Bang hit her and ended up being turned into bricks. So very, very cool. What I love is how diverse all the characters in the universe. Honestly, the whole Dakota universe is super diverse, but then the Blood Syndicate is as well. Out of the Blood Syndicate, you end up getting your first transgender superhero way back in the early 90s, before it was cool, so to speak. And you get, you know, there's a Muslim dude here. There's a lot of like really interesting interactions. Now, as I'm going through this art, I think it's important to point out the coloring. Now, this series these books were written before the days of digital coloring. And so Noel Giddings kind of pioneered this watercolor art style. And I think having this book in this format, printed on the glossy paper, or, you know, more modern paper that you get, as opposed to the newsprint that it was on before, allow those colors to really, really shine. I know on my single issues that I've been collecting over the years, the pages have started to yellow. So I'm not getting the same effect as a lot of people were when they first came out. So this is really dope to see it like this. It's really bright, really good, honestly. We're looking at Icon right now. Icon is an alien who crash lands on Earth, ends up taking the form of a slave and living his life for several generations until he's confronted by a young teenager who basically finds out he has superpowers and is like, yo, why aren't you using these powers to help the community? And so they team up. He makes that girl his sidekick. And this series is really, really good. It's probably my second favorite out of all the Milestone titles because of the interplay between Icon and Rocket. Really, really cool. The conversations that are had here are awesome. Now, of course, Static is the one who may need no introduction. If you're familiar with Static, you're familiar with him because of that animated TV show. But Virgil Hawkins, young Virgil Hawkins, he's probably the closest you might get to, say, Spider-Man, right? He's a young, nerdy kid. He's not very popular. He gets picked on all the time. And, you know, one day he gets fed up and he decides like he's going to go take it to his bully, right? He gets a gun from someone and decides, yeah, I'm going to shoot him. Well, where he goes to shoot him is the site of the Big Bang. And so he ends up in the wrong place, wrong time. And thankfully he didn't die. He ended up with these electromagnetic superpowers. Definitely the most fun book because of like the whole Spider-Man analog, and you're getting like the wise cracking. And what I love is seeing Static use his brain to figure out how to make his powers even more effective. Like, it's awesome. And so you get Static, And then that's actually the original four: Static, Icon, Hardware, and Blood Syndicate. But then they also decided to include Zombie, which Zombie is basically a scientist who's, experimenting in a lab, and ends up making himself immortal, crazy enough. And, he's an Asian superhero. And when's the last time you saw an Asian superhero that wasn't like a kung fu master, right? Shang-Chi. And that kind of just speaks to what's so great about Milestone. So obviously, this is one of the more gruesome titles. But Milestone is awesome because, yeah, it's diverse. Like, there are different races, different ethnicities represented. But they made a point to be diverse without playing into stereotypes or caricatures or popular tropes that you may have seen in other forms of media. So you get a chance to really get to know people as they are, as people. And it was really dope. That's one of the reasons I love the Icon series, is because, Icon is, as far as his politics, he's a more socially conservative person. Right. He cites Booker T. Washington as one of his big influences. Whereas Rocket, she grew up in the 90s. She idolizes Toni Morrison and W.E.B. Du Bois. And so she's a lot more, so-called radical in her thinking. And what's really cool is in that series, their viewpoints start to rub off on each other and they get to learn lessons from each other, which is super awesome. As you can see, we're not even halfway through this book, but the artwork stays amazing. It stays impactful. But yeah, so these books were diverse without playing into weird stereotypes or tropes. And they weren't diverse just for the sake of, putting a certain person on a page. It was just really, really good stuff. And a lot of that is credit to the late Dwayne McDuffie. Rest in peace. Fitting. So as far as the books are concerned, like I said, this is a shared universe. And so, like I said, I was concerned or curious to see how they would collect it, what order they would collect these stories in. Do you need to just pick this book up and read it front to back? No, absolutely not. You could read any of these series. You probably should read the series in order. If you're going to read Static, I would recommend you start with Static #1. But the series, they definitely do play off each other. They do reference each other at times, but not in a way that's confusing. Dwayne McDuffie, who was their editor-in-chief, was kind of against the whole confusing nature of shared universes. So the titles reference each other, but they don't necessarily depend on each other. I do think, though, that you gain a lot if you read these books all together. And with this collecting so much material, it's kind of begging you to read all of it, right? But like I said, as you get introduced to these characters, you're probably going to pick your favorites, and I wouldn't blame you. Like I said, as far as individual characters are concerned, Static is probably my favorite. He's just a lot of fun. He reminds me of or myself, or maybe my idyllic self as a kid. And plus, reading his series reminds me a lot of the animated series that actually did a really good job adapting some of these stories, or at least adapting the character and putting him in new situations. The Blood Syndicate was my favorite title, hands down. Just the way they interact with each other, the way they don't take any mess from anyone. The art in here by Chris Cross. There's a lot of reasons why Blood Syndicate deserves its just due. And I'm really excited because before this trade paperback collection, there was no Blood Syndicate. So this is your first time getting a chance to read Blood Syndicate, if you didn't read it in the early 90s. So you're definitely in for a treat. But yeah, they're like the X-Men with even more edge. It's like the X-Men if there were like 4 Wolverines with different power sets. And even that's probably selling it short, because their personalities are all different, but they're all tough, as you would expect inner city kids to be, who are the victims of police violence. As far as the social themes, there are a lot of social themes explored in here. As you learn more about the Big Bang, you learn just how high up in the government things were and who authorized different things to happen. I won't spoil anything, but it's very interesting. So there are a lot of layers to these books. You can enjoy them as just people with powers. You can enjoy it as a political book. You can enjoy it. It's got depth, I guess is my point. It's not just comics for kids. Icon's cape is amazing. And yeah, it's just really dope. Now, later on in these books, they end up like crossing over with the DC Universe in an event called Worlds Collide. I wonder if that'll be collected in the next volume. Oh yeah, I won't spoil anything that happens with Rocket here, but it's super awesome. Look at Icon. Gotta love that cape. Gotta love the 90s cape work. So yeah, at this point, I could keep talking, but I would spoil the book for you. I just wanted you guys to see how awesome this artwork is. And honestly, just the fact that it exists. I'm so excited. I waited for this book for so long. I thought it would never come. It's finally here, and I don't know what to do with myself. So let's go ahead and see if there are any extras here in the back. Let's see. All right, so here we go. We're looking at a cover gallery. So we got hardware. This was the collector's edition cover that came in a poly bag. Same for this cover of Blood Syndicate. Same for this cover of Icon and Static. Really, really dope stuff. There's actually an homage to this cover that Dennis Cowan did for the new Static Season 1 series that's out right now. Gotta love that. We're even getting, we got this extra feature of Hardware's arsenal, like the different tools that he uses. Very cool. More of that. And then you get creator biographies. So Dwayne McDuffie, Ivan Velez, John Paul Leon, who just recently passed last year, Crisscross, just a bunch of people. And that's the book. That is the book. Man, I am so excited that I got to show you this book. Listen, I could sing Milestone's praises for a very long time. I can start pulling out random items from my collection to show you how much of a fan I am. And maybe that'll convince you that you need to be a fan as well. But I mean, what other ways to do that than to just read the book? You can pick this up pretty much wherever books are sold, including our channel sponsor, Organic Priced Books. They are the best place to look for collected editions, omnibus, trade paperbacks, compendiums like this one, with great discounts, great customer service, and really fast shipping. They pack your books bulletproof, so you don't have to worry about any damage or anything like you would with Amazon. And if you use my coupon code BJKicks, you'll save $2 on every order every time. So go ahead. I put a nice handy link in the description below so you can grab your own copy of the Milestone Compendium. Have you read these stories? Do you love these characters as much as I do? And if you haven't, who are you most excited to get into now that I've described all these characters to you? I'd love to know more, so let me know in the comments down below. I'll see you in another video very soon. Until then, hope you saw something you liked in this one. If not, hey, that's cool, because you can always buy what you like. Just make sure you read what you buy, and be nice to others, because kindness makes the world go round. Peace.